Hey, Evan, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Evan Walzer, Chief Revenue Officer, company called Go Cardless, fintech company based in London, offices around the globe. CRO now for 4.5 years. So been here a year. Prior to that was 3 years at a company called Decibel, which is a digital experience analytics firm. Helped scale that business, grow the teams globally. That business exited to Medallia. Prior to that was at Bramwatch, where I led Europe and enterprise sales in North America. Prior to that, Topsy. So Bramwatch exited Decision, Topsy exited to Apple, and then prior to that, Genius, which exited to Calidus Cloud.
Cool. And what got you interested in sales and sales leadership?
I've always sold. I've just always sold. When I was a kid, we weren't well off, so we didn't have allowances or anything, right? If I wanted to get some money, I had to make it myself. So we lived on a rural road that fishermen like to travel across in the morning to get to the lake at the top of the hill. So I'd get up early and dig night crawlers and sell them out by the side of the road and make a little bit of scratch. I'd save up all my Halloween candy and I'd trade all the chocolate bars for hard candies because they last a lot longer. I'd wait for all the kids to eat all their chocolate, and then I'd sell them the hard candy. So I've always been in sales. I always have I've sold one thing or another.
Yeah. And so you went to school in the US.
I did, yeah.
What was that like compared to growing up? Did you grow up in the UK, I assume?
No, I'm American. I grew up in the US. So I lived in England for 4 years, first with Bramwatch, where I ran Europe for Bramwatch. And then I moved back to the States to run as the Chief Revenue Officer for Decibel. And then I moved back here because Go Cardless is based in the UK. So yeah. Families kind of come with me. We like it here. It's nice. It's a good experience, a good life. In normal times, it's weird nowadays,
And what do you see as far as the cultural differences from a sales standpoint? If any.
Yeah, so Americans and English people, we both speak the same language, but we don't mean the same thing. And I find English companies in particular tend to have the States represents always for them like the pinnacle of accomplishment. It's where you need to be, and oftentimes at the expense of ignoring the very, very good market in their backyard, which is Europe. Yeah. I'm kind of the odd duck oftentimes in the exec team of English-based companies, and being a really strong advocate for continental Europe and the value that can be generated there. There's not great deal of difference, to be honest with you, between the personality profiles and the types of people that you hire for salespeople between the US and in the UK, apart from the fact that you might get a bit more of the sales hustle in the US, much more of the kind of like the hard edge of the desire to make money that you don't see in the UK. Of course, people want to get paid here, but it's not as upfront in your face. Yeah. The continental Europe is where you see vast differences in sales styles, right? The Spanish sell and buy entirely different. The French sell and buy entirely different, and the Germans buy and sell entirely different. So that's probably one of the most interesting and exciting parts about leading a global team, particularly when you expand across Europe.
And has that part helped you being in the UK, managing people covering the rest of Europe?
Well, the time zone certainly helps.
That helps. But how about the cultural, the interpersonal?
It helps, I think, being an expat in the UK, leading a team that's spread across Europe, because you have to go out of your way to fit in. Even in the UK, I know, like I said, we speak the same language, we don't mean the same things. So you have to develop a good sense of how to blend in culturally. The best salespeople, right, they mimic the buyer and can be a chameleon, and you have to do that culturally. But you also get the other nice thing about being an expat is you get away with a lot of stuff that people just kind of assume is like, oh, well, that's just American, right? Like, so that's just how they are over there. That you might not be able to be as contrarian, for example, in the United States as you can be here. But as a result of that, it kind of follows quite naturally that you would be easier to fit in with the European teams.
Yeah. And what do you think makes a great sales leader?
A servant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone who's prepared.
think that way, though, do they?
Yeah, I get that it's different, but it's not about me. I'm not at the top of the organization. I occupy the bottom heavy lifting rung of supporting everything everyone else does. I'm there to praise their efforts, their accomplishments. I'm there to help them achieve their career ambitions. I'm there to help them craft their path to taking this job at some point.
Yeah.
I'm here to serve them.
And what was your progression as a sales leader? Because it's not like being a salesperson. You know, it's like if you become an engineering leader, it's a lot like being an engineer, but different. Being a sales leader is completely different.
It is. My progression as a sales leader is probably the same most people follow, which is your first sales leadership job. You make the kind of cardinal mistake everyone makes. Not everyone. Some people probably do it far better than I did, but a lot of people make, which is like, I was a great salesperson. I knew how to sell and win. If I just told all the salespeople to do all the stuff that made me great, they'd be as good as I am.
Yep.
And it was a total disaster. Thankfully, I had a patient boss who was prepared to be gracious and give me time. And I had to change course. And you come very quickly to the realization that people find their own path to success as a salesperson. And so that was that was one of the first big learnings, right?
Well, that's it. You want to hire, 7 of you. And then you want to like hijack the deals. And then it's like, just do this or parachute in at the end of the quarter.
Well, that's where the servant leadership comes from. Like, as I tell people all the time, it's not a natural state. Like, I'm not naturally altruistic that way. I'd love all the glory to go to me. Like, I want to win the deals. I want to be the one that is on the trophy. But it's the most efficient path to getting what I really want, which is the accomplishment for the organization.
Well, it also allows the team to open up to you. Because otherwise, what I call actors, they're acting the way the manager wants to see. And the manager turns into the audience instead of the leader. And everyone's playing office or playing business instead of doing business.
I agree with that completely. I go out of my way to try to resolve that in one of two ways. One, the servant leadership, so they know that I'm always putting them first. The second is that I have a results orientation, which lots of people have in sales, but how I justify that to them is like, look, it's the fairest way to measure people's individual contribution from a promotion perspective. So I'm consistently communicating to the organization for individual contributors, promotion along a career path. So from like junior to senior sales rep, it's down to the performance alone. There's no other factors that matter. You could be my best friend. You could be in the office 12 hours a day. That doesn't matter. What matters is your accomplishment. Honestly, I tell you, if you're in the office 12 hours a day, then we've got another problem. Like, you're working so inefficient. That's not what I want. That's not a positive thing. The game in sales, from my perspective, is like, how do we make this easy?
Right.
Hyper-growth companies look easy. That's what it is. And the example I often give is like, how easy was it to be a sales rep at Zoom? Like during the pandemic. That's what hyper-growth looks like. You're taking orders. You need to build the machine that makes it easy to win.
Yeah. And how do you do that?
Well, I got an operating model that I've built called the demand first model, which is basically you organize the whole of the commercial organization, almost not like a pyramid in terms of a hierarchy, right? The sales rep doesn't sit at the top of the hierarchy. Every role is important in the organization. It's that everything is focused towards driving AE efficiency. It's the overriding metric that matters.
Yeah.
Attainment against plan. So how do I push it beyond 80 or 90 or 100%? How can I create a structure that gives me an average level of attainment of 120%, for example? Because what I don't want is I actually don't want to hire a huge team of AEs. I vastly prefer to have 20 AEs at 200% than 40 AEs at 100%. Like, you don't lose them. They never leave. They don't complain. They're filled with confidence. The whole organization is buzzing. It's a great place to be. And it's actually more cost effective. It ends up costing you less to acquire that revenue. So there's lots of positive benefits. When you look at the stats, an enterprise rep, average tenure of enterprise rep, 18 months. Average ramp time of an enterprise rep, 12 months. That's absolute madness. Like, you can't make any money that way.
Well, that's it. Because the correlation between action and accomplishment is decoupled. Because that second or third person who comes into that territory kind of like gets the demand that the other two built.
Yep, exactly. Well, it's like in insurance sales, right? So in insurance sales, basically the person that makes all the money at an insurance broker is the one that's stuck around the longest. All the other people come in, they get swayed by the vision of big money. It's the same in investment banks too, right?
Right.
You're going to make tons of money here. They hustle for 2 years. It takes a long time to build a book. They scratch out a pretty meager living. They finally give up. They can't take it anymore. They can't hold out financially, so they leave. And somebody inherits that book.
Right.
And, you do that over 10 years and you've got a really good business you just inherited because you stuck it out. Yeah, I don't want to stick it out mentality in the team. So I try to create an organization that drives everything towards rep efficiency, from dramatically removing every barrier and obstacle that businesses seem intent to put in front of sales reps. Like you see lots of organizations that are structured in such a way as if like half the organization exists to protect the business from sales, which is, that doesn't make any sense. You're just, again, wasting money. You're just operating inefficient.
Well, that's it, because everybody wants to have their meeting, their enablement, their briefing with the salespeople. And then they're, and even leaders, they want every rep to go through each account of every other rep. And you're like, everyone else is just sitting there falling asleep while that one rep talks.
Yeah, we don't do any of that here. And then I try to ramp up. So I constrain the number of AEs and I ramp up the demand from as many possible channels as I can. And I create 5 distinct different channels of demand, invest in each of them, metric them out strictly. And then the combination of all those things leads to high levels of attainment. Uh-oh, look, I got it.
You got an assistant?
I got an assistant. Hold on one second.
Sure. And how do you keep leadership off your back? Because every CEO has their opinion, right? Especially if things aren't going as expected.
Deliver great results.
But that takes time, right?
Depends. Sometimes, I think, what is it? Saster, right? Jason's got an article on whether or not you've hired the right VP of sales if they haven't doubled revenue in the first 3 or 6 months, something like that. Yeah. So that's like one of I think the best way to do it. The other way is operating in a leadership team effectively is about being trusted by the organization. And right. I go out of my way before I take a job to make sure that they understand that's the one thing I need over everything else. I don't need anything else. I just need the trust of the business. And I ask for that straight away. I ask a lot for feedback early on. I'm constantly asking for feedback, probably annoy people actually. But the thing is, I love feedback. I want to hear everything I've done wrong because I'm already thinking about it. Yeah. It's whether or not I'm going to stew on it over the weekend in my mind without a clear answer, or someone's going to give me the clarity I want. If they'll give me that clarity for free, I'll take it.
And have you interviewed with CEOs that you didn't see eye to eye on? Because the tenure of a CRO isn't much longer than the 18 months.
I know, that's another craze. I can't believe that. I have read that stat somewhere that it's 18 months.
Well, sometimes I'm surprised it's that long, because when expectations are insane, you're almost forced to do the dumb things. Overhire.
That's true. But the organizational damage that creates.
Of course.
To bring a person in, they change everything. They put on all those structures. They move people out. They bring new people in. You're just starting to your way of working is just starting to manifest itself in the business. That's unbelievable to me. Yeah, it's an interesting point. One of the things when I interviewed for this job, I asked Hiroki's great CEO. I asked him how all founder CEOs are unreasonable. It's the degrees of unreasonable that I'm trying to understand here, right? Are you unreasonable in you've got 5 sales reps and you need to deliver 100 million next year and you've got no pipeline? That's off the charts unreasonable. It's set up for failure. Or you I'm going to ask you for very aggressive growth targets, but I'm going to back you with the resources and the time and the trust to do the job. And thankfully, I'm very fortunate he falls into that category.
And that's it. And they look at the Zooms or the current unicorns, and they say, well, why can't I just get that? Why don't we hire them or do what they're doing? Well, we're not in that market and we're not at that stage.
Yeah. Well, we don't have that product, or,
right.
That Zoom took how long to get to that stage. And then of course, they're certainly benefited by it.
Right.
external
Yeah.
dynamics that are totally
Yeah.
outside of anyone's
We're
control.
not Zoom and it's not 2020. That's why.
Yeah.
So that becomes kind of the internal sale. Do you like that, or do you do it because you have to, or do you try and avoid it?
Um, I'm actually relatively indifferent to it. It's just part of the job.
Yeah.
Now, it's whether I like it or I dislike it, it's irrelevant. It's just part of what you have to do. It's like, I'm not really naturally a morning person. If it was my preference, I'd sleep until 10 every day, but unfortunately I can't. It's just part of what you have to do. So, I mean, I don't stew on it very much. The thing is, what I don't want is I don't want politics. And I can't abide by that. I'll give people my honest opinion. They give me their honest opinion. If we operate honestly upfront with each other and prepared to have hard conversations, I'm great with that. I'll take any criticism. I'll take any type of change that you want to bring down, just as long as we're clear about it.
And how about on the marketing side? Is that under your domain, or is it's separate?
No, so we've got a chief growth officer, Duncan, who I work with closely, and we've got really tight on. This is the way I think you have to, right? Like, whether it's a chief growth officer, it's a CMO, it's a SVP of marketing, whatnot. Like, you got to get to be best friends with these people. It's the same with finance. You don't want to make enemies of finance. If I made an enemy of finance, I would be setting up my entire team to fail. It's the same with marketing.
And because when you're interviewing, do you get into that? Because, those are the type of things that I've found. Like, I was once at a startup within a big company, and 90% of their business was renewal. So if you got a new account, you had to get a credit app. You had to do all of this work. And it's like, we're selling software that we can turn off. We don't need a credit app. Just logical hiccups.
I don't do it. I don't do that much due diligence. I'll be honest with you. Like, I'm mostly like, I look at the business. Does it look like it's a sensible business? Does it look like it's in a good market that I think I could be successful in? I probably should. My career probably would have been like vastly improved if I could put together a very methodical method for evaluating prospective employers. But I get caught up in the romance of it, and you get the people and you like them and you want to get the job because you think you're the right fit. And, I could probably be a bit more cold about it, but I'm just not that kind of person.
Now, it sounds like you got a good handle on the generation of demand. What do you see working, or are you really good at? Because you can waste a lot of time on it, make the investment and it doesn't pay off.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're good at it. I think what we're doing here is going to be better than anything I've ever seen anywhere else. Like, we're getting hyper smart about the propensity modeling and targeting and building the machine to drive efficiency. We're investing heavily there, not just on the data side and the machine side, but also, I mean, we've got 70 SDRs. We're growing to 110 SDRs.
Wow.
We operate on a 1-to-1 SDR ratio globally, with a 2-to-1 SDR to sales ratio in North America. So it's a key component of the plan. And if I can improve efficiency there by 10 or 20%, like, that's my path to massive overachievement.
Well, let's get into that. What do you look for in reps? Let's look at the AEs, because it's much more difficult.
So I like curiosity.
Yeah.
I really like curiosity. I don't do a lot of like early stage interviews with reps anymore. Like, my interviewing, where I'm at in the process is towards the tail end. So what I do now, because someone that makes it to me at the exec level has already gone through all the vetting of the leadership team, I trust their judgment. I only meet with them for one of two reasons. A few reasons. One, like, because we don't meet each other face to face now, and so much is done remote, and the team has gotten to such a size that I feel really uncomfortable not ever seeing someone's face or knowing them, even anything about them. I find it really elitist to have a bunch of people that work for me that I don't know in any way. So that's one. The other reason is that I want to understand I want to have clarity that they know why they do what they do. I find it the worst hires are always people that have done the job because they did the job. Like, I know why anything else. I know why I'm in sales leadership. I love building stuff. I love building companies. I like building stuff. I like figuring out ways to operate more efficiently, fixing problems. That's what I like. And that's why I do it. but I want someone to be able to tell me. Now, if someone tells me I do it for the money, that's fine. There's no wrong answer here. I just want you to know why you do it.
Right.
And then the second thing is I want them to have clarity on what it is that they want to get from this relationship. Again, no wrong answer. You tell me it's money, fine. But like I'm in the business of giving them what they want to get what the business wants. And if they don't know what that is, then I don't know what that is, in which case something's broken here.
Yeah. And when somebody wants to get into leadership, one of your reps, well, how do you either coach them to do it or have them realize they don't really want it for the right reasons?
Yeah, that's a more difficult one, right? Because I find a lot of it is a temperament issue and an intelligence issue. Like, again, going back to the original point, which is best salespeople don't always make the best managers. And that's a hard thing to swallow for some people. They think that it's just a natural progression path. I'll immediately get into it. But the thing is, sales reps that have done really well in really complicated patches, where they had to figure out a path through their own grit and intelligence and work the internal relationships to get the support to be successful, those people tend to make better managers, from my experience. They've thought through the problem. They recognize there's a problem. They've gone out and built a solution. They figured out a path to get it done, and they've organized within the business to make that happen. They're not just delivering the best bookings.
And if they have, kind of the natural thing is, they turn 30, they turn 35, whatever, and they've had success, and they assume that leadership is the next progression. But they're kind of like some autonomy. They're not exactly, helping other people. They're not discouraging other people, but they're not proactively doing something to contribute to the team other than being a sole contributor. How do you coach them through that? It's like, why do you want this?
I try to remind them of what a great job sales is.
It is.
And you can make an entire career selling.
Yes.
Being an individual contributor. Like, it doesn't always have to lead to management. And I reflect back on my career, and honestly, like, if I just stuck in enterprise sales and went bigger ticket, going to do 10, 12 million, 50 million, carry a bag of 50 million, like I'd probably make way more money and have way less stress. Like, it's a good gig.
Yeah.
Don't forget that. And there's a lot of fun in it. And management is a thankless job. Like, if you do it right, it's a thankless job, and you have to be prepared for that. A lot of people aren't. They think it's a path to status and glory, and I just remind them that that's the opposite of what it is.
And for the first line manager who wants to go to a startup and be a CRO for the first time, what advice would you have for them?
Oh man, first CRO. There's so much you could say. I would say that you should focus. The best advice I can give is that oftentimes you get into a company, you think they've hired you because they trust you, because you were the best candidate that they found. And you get in there and you start acting like you got total trust and total authority. And maybe you do. And let's say you have some success. And as a consequence, you've got that one-on-one with the CEO. You got a lot of them when you first join, and they'll start to trail off over time. CEO's a busy person. The other execs are busy people. And you start to take that as validation that you have more trust and you can just go do your job. Problem that creates is that this gap of misalignment and misunderstanding starts to emerge between you and the most important, sorry. We have, unfortunately, we've got some kids at home because the teachers at school have come down with COVID here in England. And part of the process is that the kids have to shelter. If they're in the class or they've come in contact, they have to shelter in place. So I've got both of my daughters here at the house now, and normally they'd be at school. And they don't respect the closed door.
No, they don't.
Normally I'm just fun to put them on my lap, right? But I'm kind of thinking here. And the thing is, this gap opens up. And that can become very, very dangerous, and it can lead to a lot of bad things. Like, always invest in the communication. Don't let it slip. Right. Insist on the time. make the effort to keep that, to build the personal relationship, but also to consistently over communicate and have the time with your CEO. The most important relationship you'll have. This is why you end up exited in 18 months.
Yeah. And how about that relationship with marketing? How much do you think a CRO today should understand how marketing works?
Well, well, it depends on how totally dependent you want to be on someone else. I mean, you should
Well,
understand it enough to know whether or not it's being done well,
yeah.
because your pipeline depends upon it. So I would say quite a bit.
And have you ever had the situation where it wasn't done well?
Oh
And,
yeah,
and how
100%.
because I see that more often than it being done well. And how do you get that alignment back? Because sometimes they have misaligned, rewards. They're rewarded by
Yeah,
number of dumb things versus number of good things.
I mean, sometimes you can't. Depends on the dynamics of the business.
Yeah.
Where I could, you look to influence the business to bring in a person that would be more accountable and more likely to deliver. And then you get involved in the interview process and make sure that you've got someone that you think is focused on demand generation. There's marketers kind of tend to fall into two categories. You got traditional creative marketers, which is they like the comms, they like the branding, they like the events, the fun stuff. And then you've got your wonkish demand gen marketers. They're really heavy in the metrics, they're really focused on pipeline. That's the one you want. I mean, it depends on the stage of the company, but the early stage company, that's the one you want. Bigger stage company, like if you got crap branding and doing no events, that's going to hurt as well. So you have to, matters by the stage of the company. But I always have a bias, obviously, towards people that are really, really hyper focused on pipeline.
Cool. And you came highly recommended to the show. What do you think motivated people to do that?
I know who recommended me, Pat. He actually recommended me for this job. He works with me here. I've worked with him at another company as well.
Yeah.
I think he just, him and I have a good personal relationship. He knows that I don't play games. He knows that I care deeply about the outcome. I've been reasonably successful, and he knows I'm somewhat competent. So I'd say that's probably the main motivating factor.
Cool. Great. Hey, Evan, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Oh, like I don't do many interviews. I actually don't like the limelight at all. I'm not a big fan of public speaking. I got a LinkedIn profile. That's about it. I'm not like on social media. I'm not trying to build a brand that way.